Well, hello everybody, and thanks to the Vocal to Thigh for the chance to talk to you about my new book. I spoke to the Autumn School a year ago, and at that point I was doing a sort of web blog diary thing called the Quest Chronicle, telling the story of the Shackleton Rowett expedition of 100 years ago. Uh, but around that time, with encouragement from others, I decided that it was the best way to do things was as a book. So that's where we started, and as I've also said, compiling the book was rather like doing a jigsaw puzzle with the wrong guide picture. And Shackleton's Last Voyage, the 1923 book of the expedition, doesn't tell the whole story. Um, the pieces of the jigsaw that I had were family collections of artifacts and articles. My grandmother kept an exhaustive book of paper cuttings. You can't believe everything you read in the papers, but it's useful as a guide and illustrative. And also private correspondence between Shackleton and my grandparents, which hasn't been published before. Um, I also found at the Ohio State University the archive of George Hubert Wilkins, the naturalist, on the expedition, and he wrote lengthy descriptions of his work and his thoughts, and that was a really useful addition to the story. Um, then there's the diaries of Alexander Macklin, who did largely contribute to the Shackleton's Last Voyage book, but also the diaries of other crew members, which I found in the Scott Polar Research Institute, which has become a familiar location with my research desk. So those are Jeffrey, Jimmy Dell, and in particular Christopher Naisbitt, who only boarded the Quest at Rio, but provided many interesting insights to the stories. So this all helped to pull out some real detail about what happened on the Quest expedition. One of the central issues was always, well, what about the Quest, the boat, the ship, and what the problems were. So it's complex, and it's not just one or two things. It's a complex arrangement of things, and these are in the book. And so poor Alexander Kerr, who had to put up with the ship and keeping it moving in difficult circumstances, really had a lot to deal with. And then mysteries like the airplane, which was much noted and reported in the papers before they left, but was never seen again. So that's I think we've got to the bottom of what happened to that. And then what about Frank Wild, who took over command of the expedition after Shackleton died, and how did he cope with the strains and stresses of leadership in the situation that they were in? There's also a reflective on the science that was done on the expedition. It was a very extensive itinerary compared to polar excursions because of all the different places they studied, and so the biodiversity and geographical diversity was considerable. And if they had completed their expedition, who knows what might have been left by Quest. Reginald James indeed called the prospective itinerary a new challenger. And then there's issues like what happened afterwards. How come when the crew were assembled for this photograph at the cairn of Memorial Cairn for Shackleton in May 1922, my grandfather was taking action in court against the widow of Sir Ernest Shackleton. So a lot of post-expedition events to be explained and understood. And it's in the book. I'm really sorry I can't be with you to share the autumn school. So have a fabulous time and thanks for listening.